I am enamored with the idea of the American folk hero. John Henry, Jesse James, Johnny Appleseed, Paul Bunyan, man, I love them all. 100 years down the line, when you and I are hanging out with Ted Williams in a cryo chamber, there's only going to be one ball player that transcends everything and embodies America and baseball and everything they stand for. The only person I'm absolutely certain will stand the test of time as a folk hero. That man is Leroy Satchel Paige, one of the most captivating, inspiring, and entertaining people to ever walk the face of the earth. And this video is a tribute to him, where we'll explore just how great he really was, but also why he should be so immortalized in American history. Leroy was born in Mobile, Alabama in 1906 to a washwoman and a gardener, the seventh of 13 children. Paige grew up in the segregated South in abject poverty, and to help support himself and his huge family at an early age, he took up odd jobs at the local train station. Chief among them was polishing shoes and carrying bags for the rich white travelers that frequented the local trains and hotels. Even as a kid, Paige was clever, and he threw together a contraption with a pole and ropes to carry multiple bags at once. Some of the other kids working heckled him, "You look like a walking satchel tree." Thus, Leroy Paige was dead, and Satchel Paige was born. Satchel played ball as a kid, but nothing too organized. Most of his youth was spent playing pickup games of top ball, which resembled baseball but was played with a bottle cap and a broomstick usually. He loved it though, and his mother Lula Paige would say that Satchel would rather play baseball than eat. Paige was mischievous to say the least, commonly swiping items out of his clients' bags that he was carrying, but it came to a head at the age of 11 when he got into a rock fight with a group of kids from the white side of Mobile. Paige skipped school often and had some previous run-ins with the law, so he was sent to a reform school that was basically just juvie for black kids. Things looked bleak when he was sentenced until his 17th birthday, but Paige was glad to find that the school had a baseball coach named Moses Davis. Paige spent his reform sentence first learning how to play organized baseball, then fine-tuning his skill on the mound under Davis's tutelage. Satchel was thin and lanky, clocking in at 6 feet tall and just 140 pounds, but he had unexpected strength, freakishly long arms, and monstrous hands. I mean, let's just take a look to appreciate these mitts. They make baseballs look like billiard balls. All this is to say, Paige had an ideal build for a pitcher, and due to his reform sentence, all the time in the world to hone his craft. Davis would teach Paige to analyze hitters' stances to find their weak spots, and taught Satchel his signature delivery with a high leg kick, and the ball wound as far back as Satchel's long arms could carry it, coiled up for the release of his sizzling fastball. Paige, looking back, said he traded 5 years of freedom as a child to learn how to pitch. So there's the superhero origin story. Let's get to baseball. By the time Satchel's sentence was over, he immediately entered the independent Negro Leagues before making his incorporated league debut for the Birmingham Black Barons in 1927 at the age of 20. This is where Paige's officially kept records begin, and we get to take a look at his career Negro League stats. It's easy to discount these numbers since they aren't against major league level competition, but the gap between MLB and the Negro Leagues probably isn't as wide as you think it is. Remember that MLB wasn't integrated at this point, and most players weren't even full-time ball players. They had to take up jobs in the offseason just to pay the bills. Paige had a 3.10 ERA in 18 seasons in the Negro Leagues, then in 6 MLB seasons he had a 3.29 ERA, all at age 42 or older. His career 8 Ks per 9 and 1.6 walks per 9 in the Negro Leagues is still good by today's standards, but for context, while Negro Leagues per 9s aren't available, in 1940, MLB league average Ks per 9 was 3.7, and league average walks per 9 was 3.4. Satchel Paige, across his entire Negro League career, walked half as many hitters as MLB average, and had 2.5 times more strikeouts. So even on the surface, Paige's numbers are great for his entire career, but we have to take into account Paige pitched year-round, barnstorming and playing in foreign leagues, often not even taking days off between starts. Paige would play exhibitions during the Negro League season sometimes, on top of playing in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Canada, and the Dominican Republic in the offseason at various points in his career. Considering Paige pitched at this volume for about 30 years, and didn't fully stop pitching until he was well into his 50s, it is very possible Paige has pitched a baseball more times than anyone in human history, which in my opinion is what makes him one of the best to ever do it. Let's take a closer look. The MLB innings pitched record holder is Cy Young, with 7,356 in 815 games. Paige is officially credited with 2,671 innings in 292 career games, but there's just no way this actually accounts for every game he played. Paige himself estimated that he pitched in 2,500 games in his career, Even if he only averaged 3 innings per game, that'd still beat the MLB record for innings and games played. But while you might think Satchel, the renowned showman, was just exaggerating for effect, in hindsight, 2,500 games was probably an underestimate. Paige pitched year-round for most of his career between barnstorming and various minor leagues and foreign leagues. Additionally, since he was such a big draw for fans, managers were incentivized to pitch Satchel every game, and since Satchel usually got a share of gate prices, he tended not to mind. So instead of being used as a conventional starter for the era, where he'd pitch a complete game or close to it every 4th or 5th day, Paige was used in a surprisingly sabermetric way, similar to a fireman reliever or a multi-inning opener. Of course, it was more due to money than wanting to win games, but Paige, during his peak, which was at least 15 years long, would pitch 3 or 4 innings 5+ times a week, kind of a proto-Josh Hader. So this is all napkin math, but let's be conservative and say that for Paige's pre-MLB prime from 1927 to 1947, Paige pitched once every 4 days on average. This would give him about 1,900 games pitched in this period, and if we continue to be conservative and say he averaged 3 innings per game, that's 5,700 innings. That absolutely demolishes the MLB games played record held by Jesse Orosco, and comes close to Cy Young's innings record, which both will probably never be broken. And then after those extremely conservative estimates, Paige pitched 5 years in the majors, and then at least 5 more years of independent and minor league ball, while barnstorming year-round the entire time. And you don't have 30 years of elite production without tailoring your pitching style to your aging body. When Paige first started playing pro ball, he was a wild fireballer with a fastball that Joe DiMaggio, among others, called the hardest he'd ever seen. He struggled with his control though, and didn't have any secondary pitches. It was just the heater over and over again, which hitters still couldn't catch up with. As he grew in age and experience though, he realized that if he was pitching 5 days in a row all year, he probably couldn't afford to just throw his hardest fastball over and over again. After sustaining a serious arm injury in Mexico, which many thought would end his career, Satchel developed an arsenal of pitches at least 10 deep. And Paige didn't adhere to the normal curveball or changeup. No, he threw the wobbly ball, the whipsy-dipsy-do, the bat dodger, and countless others. Paige threw everything from a looping 12-6 curve to a sharp slider, to a changeup, to even a knuckleball. But he had the skill to throw pitches that blurred the line between conventional classifications, throwing them at different speeds and arm angles. He was one of the first pitchers to throw a Corey Kluber-style slurve. He threw a changeup he called a hesitation pitch, which entailed him basically just stopping mid-delivery, a pitch that was so effective it was banned by MLB, and his fastball was still electric well into his 30s. My favorite baseball writer Joe Posnanski called Satchel the hardest thrower in the history of baseball, and Bob Feller, who many credit with the hardest thrower title, agreed with the sentiment. Paige grew from a thrower as a kid to a pitcher, one that was renowned for both his insane fastball and breaking pitches, but also his pinpoint control to the point where it's really not a stretch to say that Paige is a top 5 pitcher ever, if not better. Okay, so we've established that Satchel was absurdly good, probably one of the best to ever do it, and he pitched for an insanely long time. But that doesn't make him a folk hero. I love Mike Trout, and he'll probably go down as one of the 10 best players in history, but Lord knows he won't be viewed as a folk hero by future generations. What cements Paige as an American icon is how he overcame such extreme circumstances to be one of the GOATs, but also his flair for showmanship and all the outlandish stories that arose from it in his nearly 40-year playing career. You can consider the rest of this video an anthology of Satchel Paige's best anecdotes and quirks, so if you were bored by all the numbers, then you might like this part better. Satchel was well known as an entertainer first and a ball player second. His theatrics like telling his infielders to sit down, or calling his outfield in for an at-bat, or telling a hitter exactly what pitch was about to come were well documented. The best encapsulation of everything about Satchel is probably the story of the 1942 Negro League World Series, where Paige's Kansas City Monarchs played against the Homestead Grays. In Game 1, Satchel started and threw 5 scoreless innings. 2 days later in Game 2, Paige entered in relief in the 6th inning, and in the 7th inning, at least according to Satchel, he did the single most theatrical thing in baseball history. As Paige recalls it, with a 1-run lead and 2 outs, he intentionally walked 3 hitters in a row to pitch to Josh Gibson, the best hitter in Negro League's history, and probably the organized baseball home run king. Paige then told Gibson exactly what pitches were coming and promptly struck him out in 3 pitches. Other Negro League legends in attendance like Buck Leonard and Buck O'Neil support this sequence of events, but the official records show that Paige actually gave up 3 singles beforehand and probably didn't say anything to Gibson. Believe what you want, but I know which version of the story makes me happier. This series is far from over, though. Paige finished that game, then started Game 3 just 2 days later. He only threw 2 innings, but the Monarchs won, giving them a 3-0 lead in the series. In Game 4, the Grays, on the brink of elimination, brought in all the best players on other Negro League teams to play for them, which wasn't really allowed, but for some reason the game was still played. Nonetheless, Paige threw a complete game but still lost 4-1. Kansas City played the game in protest though, and the protest was upheld so the results didn't count, forcing another Game 4. Satchel was scheduled to start Game 4, but didn't show up until the 4th inning because reportedly he was arrested for speeding in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So Satchel shows up to the ballpark late, and the second he gets there, without warming up or anything, enters right into a World Series game. He came in with a 5-4 lead in the 5th, and threw 5 scoreless innings to clinch the World Series. Satchel Paige, in a method only he would be allowed to get away with, pitched 5 games and 25 innings over the course of about a week, in a 4-game series. That is a mythology-worthy performance if I've ever seen one. I think my favorite Satchel stories, though, come during his many trips to the Caribbean to play ball during the winter. One time in Puerto Rico, while setting every league pitching record en route to beating Josh Gibson's team 23-0 in the championship game, Paige just walked off the mound and left the ballpark because he said he saw a ghost on the field. In Cuba in 1929, Paige reportedly went to a girl's house to, put his hands to use, which the girl's parents interpreted as an official engagement. When Paige rebuffed the advance, the parents sent the local police after Paige to officiate the marriage. Paige had to flee back to America to avoid the authorities. And in another version of the same story, Paige was actually chased out of the country by corrupt government officials that thought Paige had thrown a game that they had all bet on. But my favorite Paige story has to take place in the Dominican Republic. In 1937, Paige was given $30,000 by Rafael Trujillo, aka El Jefe, the totalitarian dictator of the country, to recruit players for his personal team, Los Dragones. Paige assembled a team including himself, Josh Gibson, Cool Papa Bell, who may be the fastest man to ever play baseball, and a handful of other Negro League stars. The Dream Team was put up in the best hotels in the country, but were kept under 24/7 watch by Trujillo's armed guards to make sure they didn't carouse around or do anything that would hurt their performance on the field. In the championship series, Los Dragones won the first 4 games of a 9-game series, but then lost the next 2. In Game 7, in the 9th inning, Paige nearly gave up a 5-run lead, and recalled the armed guards looking at him like a firing squad as he pitched. Thankfully for Paige, he got out of the jam and was allowed to return to the US, where the entire team was suspended from the Negro Leagues for leaving their teams to play in the DR. The team instead barnstormed for the rest of the year as Trujillo's All-Stars, and made more money than they would have in the Negro Leagues. All this talk, and we haven't even mentioned Paige's stint in Major League Baseball yet, where he proved he could get it done in any league on the planet. In July 1948, on Satchel's 42nd birthday, Cleveland Indians owner Bill Veeck brought him in for a tryout with the big league team. That very same day, Paige signed a contract, and 2 days later Satchel Paige became the 7th black man and first black pitcher to play in Major League Baseball. At 42, he also became the oldest rookie in Major League history, a record that still stands today. And Paige was excellent in his first season. Satchel was thrown right into the thick of Cleveland's tight pennant race against Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, but he performed swimmingly with a 2.48 ERA and 2.78 FIP. In classic Paige fashion, he was used unconventionally, with 7 starts in 21 games, totaling 72 innings, but in those 7 starts he delivered 2 complete game shutouts. Paige became the biggest draw in baseball that season, with all his starts being completely sold out. In one August start at Comiskey Park in Chicago, official attendance was a sold-out 51,000, but thousands more fans stormed the gate and overwhelmed ticket collectors to create a standing room only crowd of nearly 60,000. Paige's next start was in Cleveland, where more than 78,000 people showed up, the largest ever for a night game at the time. Because, well, of course he did, Satchel threw complete game shutouts in both these games. The Indians would go on to win the pennant by a game over Boston, due in no small part to Paige's work on the mound. While Paige appeared in only one game of that year's World Series, the Indians won the title, marking the start of the longest active championship drought in MLB. Satchel pitched one more season in Cleveland before moving to Bill Veeck's new team, the St. Louis Browns. He was middling in his first season, but in 1952, at the ripe age of 45, Paige had his best year as a major leaguer, putting up a 3.07 ERA and 2.85 FIP in 138 innings, working mostly as a multi-inning closer. Satchel was selected to be an all-star and led the league in games finished, putting up 2.5 fWAR, the highest for any primary reliever in the majors that season. Paige's 5.9 Ks per 9 was almost 50% better than league average, especially impressive considering his advanced age. If for some reason anyone still had doubts that Paige was an all-time great, this season dispelled them. Paige pitched his last season for the Browns in 1953, but he was far from out of baseball. He actually played basketball for the Harlem Globetrotters for a time, which seems particularly on brand. He also pitched several seasons in Miami for the AAA Marlins, his old friend Bill Veeck's newest venture, and of course he was still barnstorming and playing exhibitions the entire time. But a look at his baseball reference page would show Satchel had one more major league appearance. It would come in 1965, when Paige was 59 years old. Kansas City A's owner Charlie Finley, a legendary baseball character in his own right, signed Satchel to pitch in one game against the Red Sox in late September. He also invited many former Negro League stars like Cool Papa Bell to the game to be paid tribute. Make no mistake, it was a PR stunt through and through, since Paige was renowned for his stint with the Kansas City Monarchs, but this was a real major league game that Satchel would be pitching in. Both the A's and Red Sox were well out of contention, but all the stats still counted that night. In front of a modest crowd of less than 10,000, he threw 3 scoreless innings, only allowing 1 hit to legend Carl Yastrzemski. Even at almost 60, Satch was still throwing mid-80s with his fastball. As part of the showmanship, Satchel sat in a rocking chair between innings with a nurse and an errand boy attending to him. After his outing was finished, he was given a standing ovation, and he went back to the clubhouse. But he was called back to the field to find all the stadium lights turned off, with the crowd waving their lit lighters singing the folk song The Old Gray Mare. If Paige's life were a movie, this would be the closing frame, thousands of adoring fans and his friends and former teammates bidding him farewell into retirement after a performance cementing him as a legend. But Satchel Paige's life wasn't a movie. To bring everything full circle, Satchel Paige's life was a folk story, and somehow that story still wasn't over. Paige would pitch on and off for at least 5 more years, notably pitching for the AAA Richmond Braves at age 62. In an exhibition against the Atlanta Braves, Satchel would get Hank Aaron to weakly pop out to third on 3 straight pitches. Paige would become the first man elected to the Hall of Fame by the Negro League Selection Committee in 1971. By the end of his playing days, legends were already being told about Paige's blazing fastball, his deadly accuracy, and his wicked breaking pitches. Not to mention his flair for theatrics and his adventures and misadventures all around the world of baseball. Maybe most importantly, Satchel was a trailblazer for people of color in baseball, proving that they deserved to be on the same field and that the records counted just as much. For all those reasons, Leroy Satchel Paige will go down as one of the most beloved and important figures in American history. Paige mostly stopped pitching in 1972 at 63 years young. Most folk heroes reach a climactic and untimely end, but Satchel Paige settled down in Kansas City with his second wife, where they raised 8 children together. He was still tangentially involved in the game, serving as a minor league pitching coach or consultant for several clubs, before passing away of a heart attack in his home in 1982. In Satchel's 73 years, he unquestionably lived more than almost anyone else in human history, and for that, he deserves to be immortalized. Thanks for sticking around. This was definitely the most historical video I've made, but it was fun to do, so let me know if you want to see more like it. If you enjoyed, it helps me out a ton to subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.